Welcome back to That Rugby podcast, hosted by the Rugby Booth. Myself and Husey back again. Probably our second to last show before the end of the year. We have a little break. Last week, we took you all through the Rugby Championship teams and their gradings, or what we thought were their grades for the year and their performances realistically, and what we thought they did well and did wrong. Today, it's the Six Nations turn. We go through the Six Nations, the Northern Hemisphere teams, and tell you what we think of their seasons. Husey, we shall start with, I think, the Six Nations champs is probably the best way to start. So Ireland this year were 8-3. If we run it back, they beat France in the Six Nations, beat Italy in the Six Nations, beat Wales, lost to England, beat Scotland, 1-1 against South Africa in the year split, lost to New Zealand one game, beat Argentina, beat Fiji, beat Australia in the Northern Tour. I'm going to start with my grade and my what I think kind of went well for them this season. I've gone B+, and it may be a little high from I guess the season, and I guess expectations wise it's not a B+ season, but actual result wise it's a B+ season, and I'll tell you why. And expectations wise, they were expecting to win all their games. Basically, they are at the team they thought they were number one in the world, best team in the world. They were expecting to win all their games. Look, you could drop one against South Africa and probably still have a really good season, but their loss against New Zealand is really bad. Their loss against England, I know it was a last minute drop goal by Marcus Smith. It now comes off and rubs off as a poor result. So you kind of go around, you go, look, they won the Six Nations. They went into South Africa and split the series, which is never easy to do. All Blacks couldn't do it. And then performed obviously pretty poorly at the end of the year. And I think that's what really drops the grade down, is just as much that they lost to New Zealand, but they actually performed poorly against Argentina and Wallabies to their expectations, to their belief that they're the number one ranking team in the world. And that's where I kind of go, look, if they want to be held at those levels, like, totally fine and understandable. But then, for me, that's not an A grade season. It's a very good season to win the Six Nations, to split a series against South Africa, and to win, two of their three losses coming against the other top two teams in the world. A very good results. But that's why I don't give them an A, because of where they expect to be.
Yeah, I think it's funny because of how the Northern Hemisphere seasons work, but it's almost like they were a better team at the start of the year than they were at the end of the year, you know? And that's not a good thing for a team. Now, of course, coming into these end of year tests, everyone's played a full year of rugby. They had the start of Six Nations, but then they, had a bit of time off and come into these. So, there's arguments to be made about rust and things like that. That being said, look, we have to look at the season as a whole, and even though they finished the end of the season probably poorer than the way they started it, right? They were essentially 2-2 in the Autumn Nation series. The start of the year was a fantastic start to the year, right? They beat France in France, right? No Anton Dupont, but that's much of a muchness. They still beat France in France. Had a fantastic Six Nations campaign, only losing to England in England by 1 point, right? Then to go to South Africa and split the series with South Africa is a fantastic result. Then when they're in the Autumn Nations, sorry, they were 3-1 in the Autumn Nations, not 2-2. They were 3-1 in the Autumn Nations, right? And look, we said we're holding Argentina to the same standards as what we hold Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa to, particularly the same standard we hold New Zealand and South Africa to. They were Argentina's a great team, and they put up a spirited game against Ireland. Like, that's not an easy win. It's not a given, So I give Ireland a bit of credit for that. I think them playing New Zealand as their first match in the Autumn Nations series is a tough ask, especially New Zealand that had a warm-up game essentially against England. So yeah, no, I give a lot of the credit to this actually. I do give them an A. I think they had a successful year, right? They went into South Africa and split against South Africa, which is, that's great. That's a fantastic result to do in South Africa, right? It would have been if they won both if they'd gone to South Africa and won both games in South Africa, that would have boosted them to pretty much an A+, regardless of anything else that happened in the year. right? You know, it's a South Africa team that has won a Lions tour, right? So if Ireland themselves can go there and 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 split a game, that's pretty bloody good. If they went there and won the series, it would have been even better. And they were only a converted try off in their loss. They won the Six Nations, had a fantastic Six Nations, and yeah, went 3-1 in the Auto Series. So I think it's a really good year to be an Irish rugby fan. Not much to complain about.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. I think their expectations going into this year and their belief that they were going to be the number one team in the world, to lose 3 games probably hurts them a little bit more. And again, as I said, the one against South Africa you can always take. To go to South Africa away from home. But when you look at those other 2 losses, I know England's away, but a 1 point loss to England now looks, when you've seen other teams do what they've done to England and beat England, it now looks pretty bad. And then the New Zealand one as well, and we talked about not the best New Zealand team. I think I'm holding them to a higher account because they expect to be held to a higher account as well.
Yeah, maybe I guess, but I try and look at it as just like, you know, uh, like this is this team's year, regardless of their own expectations, stuff like that. Like, what do these results say to me? What do the quality of these results say to me? And that's what the quality of these results says an A year to me. As I said, they split with South Africa. They had one loss in the Six Nations, one loss in the Autumn Series. That's a fantastic year. That's a winning year.
I guess what I would say to you, and pose the question to you, is all those other games, like, I assume they went in as favourites to win, if you know what I mean. Like, they won the games that they should have won. And you then look at it and you go, they were favourites over the New All Blacks and favourites against the English. So I go, out of all of those games, I would say they probably weren't favourites against South Africa in the game that they won.
Mm.
And again, let's take that South Africa series out of it. I don't think the Irish would have been happy with the year minus a South African series. Like, I think they, and I know it's really breaking it down, but I go, they believe they are the best team in the world.
Yeah. Well, you look at the England team, right, and what they did in this autumn series as well, and even what they did against New Zealand in New Zealand, they were all close results. England has not been a pushover team. The vaunted South Africans only beat them by 9 points as well. So this is not England didn't get the rub of the green a lot of times, even against France in France. So well, look, we may as well run through England now because we're sort of
Let's do it.
tracked into it, right? All right. So their year started off with a here we are. They
Narrow win
beat
against Italy.
Italy, win against Italy, win against Wales, loss against Scotland, which was a rough one, but Scotland, Fortress Murrayfield is pretty difficult for a lot of teams to play at. Pipped Ireland by a point, lost to France by 2 points in France. I always double up however I say it, France or France. Smashed Japan, 1 point loss to New Zealand, 7 point loss to New Zealand, 2 point loss to New Zealand. So throughout the 3 games against New Zealand, their point differential was 10 points. It's pretty impressive, right? Lost to Australia on a last gasp try. Were competitive with South Africa throughout the game and lost 20-29, and then smashed Japan again. So I think this England team has had a rough year. I don't think that their record, their overall win loss, which is 5-7, reflects the quality of the team. But then again, the most important thing in a rugby game is winning the game. So that does come into account. So for my mind, for England, I give them a C plus of a year, right? It was overall disappointing, but I feel like the quality of their play was better than where they were last year. And they made it to a Rugby World Cup semi-final last year. For me, the quality, I feel like they stepped up in a lot of areas. Like they how they handled South Africa, I think, was really impressive. How they played against New Zealand in all of their games against them, it was always a tight contest. I felt like there was a bit of pride restored in the English jersey after the sort of Eddie Jones debacle and the fallout of that, and even the World Cup felt a bit like of a they just kind of got through on a very easy group kind of thing, which let's be honest, they did. And even their quarterfinal against Fiji, you know,
Yeah.
it's so this year though it felt like a different team. So I give them a C plus because still though the most critical aspect was finishing games and they couldn't do that, right? They couldn't close out some of these these key games. They did it in at times, like against Ireland, but against France they couldn't crack it. Against New Zealand, a couple of times. Against Australia, against South Africa, against the quality opponents, they couldn't get it done. So that's why I give them a C plus, because I feel like a C is maybe a little bit too harsh, because I feel like I need to give recognition that even though they lost those games, they they were a step forward from where they were last year. So that's what I think. I gave Australia a C plus as well, and I think I equate their years pretty similarly, in that they couldn't get the wins in occasions when they, like, the good teams would get wins, but they still took a step, and they still felt like a better team. It felt like they were a better team at the end of the year than they were at the start of the year.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I went to see that,
Yeah.
and again, you make a lot of good points in looking at the results, and you go, no game. You take away those two Japanese games, no game is decided by more than 9 points. So they're all tight affairs. But then you kind of delve into it a bit more, and again, Japan have been so shockingly bad that
Yeah.
those two wins I really have to just take them away from when I'm really looking into it. So I go, they were 3-7 in meaningful games, and I go, Italy at the start of the season, they only beat by 3 points. And again, Italy, have upset there. They were very strong in that Six Nations, pushed the All Blacks away. Nothing to knock your head on. The Welsh won by 2 points, and again, the Welsh won. The Welsh game by 2 points that they won. Again, everyone gets up for playing England. The Welsh more than anyone else, just about. So I'm not surprised that it's a closer game than what we've seen with all the other results for Wales. But again, still not a comprehensive performance and an opportunity where they could have.
What Wales only lost to Scotland by 1 point. That was a very tight affair as well.
Again, don't get me wrong, but when we're talking about Wales now. They're going to stay in the fight, but they are also capitulating on their own thing, and we'll get to them right at the bottom of this. But you look at their losses, as you've said. You go, or even the one against Ireland, that's a 1-point win. So all their wins, other you take away those Japan games, they have won by a total of 6 points. So for their wins, their meaningful wins. Then you go into their losses, and as you said, you take away Scotland and South Africa, and you go, there's no more than a 7-point. It's all a 1-point game. So I go, look, as you said, I agree. They had a year which was tough. I think a lot of what you said is right. They restored some pride in the jersey, but you've got to win games, and you've got to win meaningful games to me. And I go, when you're 3-7 in meaningful games, I don't believe that can put you. I can argue the point of out of failure because of the results and how close they all were. They were in the games. It's I reckon if you come back and do these games again next year and it's the same situation, they may be 7-3. But when we're looking at it right now at 3-7, most important thing, as you said, is winning those games. I can't go any higher than a C, in my opinion, that way. On to the French, who obviously, it's going to be an interesting way the way you grade the French and how we grade the French, because this is for most of the season, Antoine Dupontless French team that we're discussing. So their first game got well beaten by the Irish, beat the Scots in the Six Nations, but there was also a knock-on over the line, so that was controversial. Drew Italy at home, beat Wales, beat England at home. So that was the Six Nations. They went into Argentina and split, beat Uruguay in one of the games over there as well, and then won against Japan, New Zealand, and Argentina as Dupont came back. 8-2-1 in the end. Husey, what did you go with?
I mean, the same as Ireland, A. I don't think you could give them an A plus. As we said, A plus is a very difficult thing to get. They, lost 2 games, as well, which I think the South Africans have also lost 2 games, so can't give them an A plus. But overall, as you said, it's because for that Six Nations tournament they were without Anton Dupont, which is huge. As we've seen, he is a huge best player in the world right now. I don't think that's a massive statement to make. There's the arguments to be made for other players, but I think he's definitely one of the claimants to that throne. And so to play without him and still have success is impressive. Tough game against Ireland. First game of the year, first game without Dupont. Tough loss. And I think the tie against Italy as well was tough. But I think, it's particularly come this end of year tour, is impressive. I still I still don't understand how they beat you guys. Like, for me, it's just like they didn't seem to have the ball at all, but they just seem to constantly be putting points on the board. And that's the mark of an incredibly good team, that they just maximize their opportunities. You could be down in all the statistics, but if you make the most out of every opportunity you have the ball, you will win games, and that's what they showed there. They beat Argentina in Argentina, um, which is not an easy thing to do. Um, and yeah, I think overall it's a very successful year for them in which they were missing their best player.
Yeah, and I can see your argument. The reason I have to make my argument is I don't think their year was better than the Irish. Um, so I have to go lower than the Irish in my opinion when I'm grading them, and I gave the Irish a B plus. So I've gone B, and I justify it by going, look, they have no trophies in their cabinet. Basically, the Six
Yeah,
Nations, which is there,
it's true.
Ireland hold again. They when they needed to in that first game, they were hosting Ireland. They had an opportunity to beat Ireland and they fell apart. They then luckily got away with a win against Scotland. And again, Scotland we'll discuss, but Scotland should have won that game. To draw against Italy at home, where again, Italy missed a penalty to win that game. Beating Wales, beating England's a big one. Then, as you said, they go to Argentina, they send a B team. I'm fucking grading them because of that as well. You choose to send a B team. And as someone said in one of our comments, it's basically a C team just about. Take away the Uruguay game because they're playing a lesser team. Yes, when they get back home, the win against New Zealand, the win against Japan, which I'm taking out as a meaningful game as well, because Japan weren't meaningful in any of their games. Then you look at their game against Argentina, which I think capped off a good season. And again, a B's a good grade. Like I look at it as well. As we've said, this B's a good grade for a team that, as we missed upon in the big tournament of this year for them, and then when he was there, we're quite clearly one of the better teams in the world again. So I go, this is a team again where we expect the top 4 teams in the world. They showed it towards the end of the season. I just think I'm going to judge them based on not just the one player, because there's been times like if we took when the Wallabies were missing Fraser McWright out of those games
Yeah.
and said, okay, now, and I'm not comparing DuPont and McWright, don't get me on there, but just to say as an example, like for like, if we go, hey, if McWright was there for all those games, Wallabies would have won these games. We don't know that. I'm judging them for what they had there, and it wasn't good enough to win the Six Nations, and to me that has to be a B.
Yeah, I'm going to change from an A to a B plus because I think you're right. There does need to be a distinction between the Irish and the French. I gave the Irish an A, so I'll drop the French to a B plus to make that gap between, because you're right. They don't have any trophies to show at the end of the day, and that is an important thing. So yeah, no, I slightly adjust my grade on that.
Nice. On to the Scots. The Scots, an interesting season for them as well. 9-4 all up, but they beat the Welsh in the Six Nations. Controversial loss to France. Beat the English. Lost to Italy. Lost to Ireland. And then they had a interesting mid-year test. They played Canada, USA, Chile, and Uruguay, and Fiji to finish it up. Fiji started off their Autumn Nations. Then they lost to South Africa, beat Portugal, and beat Australia. My friend, what do you grade them?
It's a really tough one, because the record is 9-4, right? But if we take out Canada, USA, Chile, Uruguay, and Fiji, and Portugal, it's 3-4 in meaningful games, right? If we can say that. I mean, look, really by that standard, we should take Wales out. uh, uh, but yeah, look, their Six Nations was I think they'd be very disappointed in their Six Nations because they were in all of those games. They were all winnable games. They very easily could have gone 5-0 in the Six Nations. We could have been talking about a Scottish Grand Slam this year, but very similar to what we said with the English is the most important thing is winning. You don't get trophies for almost. Um, we can make that a T-shirt. uh, and then look, they took care of the games they were supposed to take care of, which is great. They get some props for that. I'm struggling to grade Scotland, to be honest, because a C feels harsh, but a B feels too good, and a C plus feels like a cop out. So I'm a bit stuck with them. I would say, look, I think I'm going to go with a C especially because of the disappointing loss to South Africa. I think if that had been a closer game, I would have been a bit kinder. But the fact it was such a big gap there, like yes, then they made up for it against Portugal and Australia, but it's a bit like, I think their Six Nations was very disappointing. Um, the losing to France, losing to Italy, especially since they were hosting France as well. And yes, it was controversial, and they should have won. But again, what's your favorite saying? If a single call decides the outcome of the game, you didn't do enough to win, right? Um, so yeah, look, I give him a C. Like it was a decent year. Like the, those Northern Tour games would have felt really good, and I think beating Fiji by that amount would have felt good when you've seen what Fiji's been able to do to other teams. But uh, again, you don't win trophies for feeling good. You don't win trophies for almost. Um, it's just yeah. I'd say they'd probably be a bit disappointed. Because of those games that got away from them. And then coming off a disappointing World Cup year as well, when they felt like they got screwed over by the pool system if they, X, Y, and Z and the other. Um, yeah, I think they had a chip on their shoulder this year, and I think that chip is still there.
Yeah, look, I'm copping myself out because I'm going C plus, and I agree with a lot of what you've said. Like, you think about them playing in the Six Nations, they went in as one of the top teams going into it. Without Dupont there,
Yeah.
if they win that game against France and then beat England, they're well on their way to pushing Ireland in that final game for a Six Nations title.
Yeah.
So to not even compete really when it's a great opportunity again, you're never going to get this opportunity again without a Dupont, with the Irish losing to the English. They were never going to. This was a great opportunity for them. Won a strong squad. They should have been better at that. So I go, okay, Six Nation wise, yeah, that was tough. Now there's the other side of me that goes, there's only really one goal with the Scottish team, and to beat England, and they beat England, and I'm like, so if you take it if that's their
Yeah.
standard every time, that's an A plus season. They beat England, they did it well, but
Mm.
we have to dive into it a bit more because yes, as much as I want to get on board with that and love the idea of that for Scotland, they are a better team now than they have been in the past, where it used to be like, hey, beating England was enough. This team I'm going to
Yeah.
hold as I held Ireland to them being number one. Scotland are the fifth best team in the world. They're pushing those top four teams to be able to come in. I think actually Argentina are, but they're in that Argentina bracket with Scotland where it's fifth and sixth. It's
Yeah.
right there. If you want to show us, beat those teams. They took care of business with all the other games, and I love that they've played those Canada's, USA, Chile, Uruguay's. I love that they've done that. Played Portugal. They're not scared to take on those ones that could come up, and if they get beaten by them, it's a shock, and they would have rotated some squad. But then when they got tested again by South Africa, they crumbled. So I kind of go, look, every time they played a team above them in the world rankings, they didn't do the job. And I go, to do Bs and stuff like that, I want to see more competitive in those opportunities. So I said C plus. It's a cop out, as you said. It's the easy one to give them because they beat England. Successful season for them. But is the big thing here. I want more from them, and they just didn't deliver on that end.
Yes.
Italy, an interesting team as well. As you said before this, the most bang average season of all time. 5 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw. Yes. And we mean bang average, not by their performances, but their results. So lost to England by 3, got beaten by Ireland, drew with France, beat Scotland, beat Wales, lost to Samoa in the mid-year series, beat Tonga, beat Japan, doesn't count because Japan suck. Lost to Argentina, beat Georgia, and then lost to New Zealand in a close affair. Husey, how did you see this season go?
I mean, yeah, up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like a spaghetti wave. It's just it's a jumble of a season. Look, definitely like cannot rate them higher than Scotland. Absolutely, absolutely. I don't. I think Italy, like where I'm. I think by their own standards, they probably had a decent year, an okay year. But I'm trying to keep all these teams equally, and so I think by the standards we're setting for the whole group, it was a below average year. It was a poor year for the standards of the group, right? Now, what ameliorates that somewhat is their Six Nations success, right? So in the Six Nations, they went 2-1-1. In the Six Nations, Scotland went 2-3, right? Just England and Wales, right? England, Wales, right? So they technically did better than Scotland in the Six Nations, but then in the games for Scotland that we would say they're not meaningful games, aka Samoa, that the Italians lost. Um, and even against Georgia, a team who is pushing to take their spot in the Six Nations, there was a chance to come out and have a statement victory and really beat the ties off them, and they didn't do that, right? And that's more of a credit to the Georgian team than it is a knock on the Italians. The Georgian team is a serious team. And then in the game against New Zealand, that was a huge opportunity for them to take a massive step and to make a statement as well, right? Because the Kiwis were not playing to your usual standards. You were sending off two guys. It was almost like you were playing a bit of park footy that day, and the Italians could have taken advantage and didn't. So for me, it's hard to say because I think their Six Nations effort does deserve acknowledgement, but at the same time they had some poor results. So I'm giving them a C as well. I don't feel harshly enough to give them a C minus because they did beat Scotland, they did beat Wales, and they should have beaten France. They took care of business against Tonga and Japan, but they dropped one against Samoa, so it's 2-1 there. Lost to Argentina and New Zealand, just beat Georgia, 1-2 there. Again, up and down. Thrashed by Argentina, competitive with New Zealand, but didn't take their opportunities. So I think their final result perfectly encapsulates the year 5-5-1, and so that's why I give them right bang C.
Totally agree, and I've gone C as well. And it kind of hurt me to do this to them purely because, as you said, we're grading these teams based off each other as well, not just their performance. But you look where they've come from in that World Cup, which was so demoralising for the Italian rugby.
Dismal.
The big loss against us, the big loss against France. You just go where they've kind of come from. That you want to go like this has actually been a really good year for them to bounce back that way, to go and put up a fight against England, to beat Scotland, to beat Wales, to beat Georgia. Anyone who's come knocking down on their door like to say you don't deserve to be in this Six Nations, they've kind of proven wrong, and they've said, look, we've delivered. As much as they may not have been great performance, we've delivered on them, and we deserve to be in this competition.
Especially a year after going like in 2023, where they went 0-5 in the Six Nations.
Exactly. So they came out and they were much better this year. But again, I'm holding this Italian team to a standard like they had a chance to beat France. So if say they beat France there, they literally went 3-2 in the Six Nations. This team has enough talent there, without a doubt, to be doing that every year and pushing these teams now. And they've shown it this year. The Samoan loss is a big one that stands out because, again, I think, as we said, with all these teams, you've got to take care of business. Team ranked below you, if you're a top 10 team in the world, take care of business. They didn't. It's a big one for Samoa, and again, congratulations to them. And as you said, opportunity to blow Georgia out of the water and to come from behind and do it. An opportunity against New Zealand they just didn't quite take. And I want to give them a better grade, but I agree with you. I go, as much as I look at Scotland results, I go, the Six Nations may have been better for Italy, and like after the Six Nations, they may have been at a B plus. But when you take the whole year into a microscope and you go, actually, they weren't better than what Scotland were as a year. So that's why I've gone Scotland as a C plus, Italy as a C. One final team to rule them all to run through. Welsh. Wales 0-11. Historic year. And all things not good. Husey, what did you go?
Yeah. Wales will be really happy with the grade that I gave them because I think an F is too high. So I've gone right down the alphabet. I've given them a W, their first one for the year. It's hard to imagine a worse year. And I say this as a Wallabies fan who lived through a year of Eddie Jones because at least we won a game. Wales this year did not. Heartbreaking 1-point loss to Scotland. Heartbreaking 2-point loss to England. Thrashed by Ireland. Thrashed by France. Beaten by Italy at home. Thrashed by South Africa. Beaten by Australia. And the scorelines in both games are very complimentary to them. And this is both in double-digit wins. Very complimentary to them. Fiji beat them a year after Wales flogged them in the World Cup. Flogged by Australia and then flogged by South Africa. So it just got worse. There's nothing. There's no positives really. Maybe there's a couple of young players that have played in some games that you can maybe take as a positive. But there's nothing for me that can pick it above an F. Like whatever our lowest grade is, that is what I would give him. If our lowest grade is an F, it's an F.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I go, this is historically bad, and this is it's near on point embarrassment for a team that made the quarterfinal last year at the World Cup. And again, you can say, they had players leave after that World Cup, the likes of Dan Bigger, so on and so forth. There's still talent in Wales. Don't tell me there's not. Every team has that as well. Every single team went through it. The All Blacks went through it, and if we put out a 9-11 year, God, heads would roll. Again, you can take it as well. Look, they fought early against Scotland and England, but then you start seeing some of the other results, and they're just not in these games. And you've got to think, to even break this down even more, this is the Wallabies' first games under Joe Smith. Like, completely new coach, first games, and that's that's an opportunity for Wales. Like, you've got fucking one of the greatest coaches of all time, the greatest Welsh coach of all time, and you just nothing's there. So I go, is the kettle just not there? I don't know. I don't have all the answers to their problems, but then you run home and, as you said, to lose to Fiji at home for the first time I think ever. Their games against Australia and South Africa weren't even competitive. It's as bad as it can get. It has to be an F. There's just, I don't even see a bright side to this. Like, if I'm marking this grade, it's like they've attempted every single answer. Some answers they get close, but fucking 90% of the time they're way fucking off, and they're talking about a whole different subject. I'm teaching English. They're doing maths on these tests. That's what is happening right now. I sit there and go, this is just bad. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel either as we come into next year.
Yeah.
They need to win in the Six Nations, or there's real trouble for Wales. Rugby, first time they're out of the top 10 in a long time. I don't even know where they're ranked. They could be even lower. I imagine they're down 12, 13, 14th-ish because if they've lost to Fiji and so on. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say for them. But, yeah. That is our rating of the Six Nations teams. Let us know what you think of all those grades / your grades, what you think of their seasons. It's been an interesting one for the Six Nations teams. And again, we go into next year and you'll be interested after the way teams have performed. Six Nations just around the corner, a couple months, 2-3 months away now. I go, France have put their hands up. They've got the easier of draws in the Six Nations. It's going to be a tight affair there. And then you've got the likes of Wales and Italy. Again, Italy could beat anyone. Wales need to beat someone. England are showing they're going to be in every single game. So these teams, it's not long till they go again, and I'll be interested to see what happens, especially with some of the teams we've discussed today. One more show next week, probably before the end of the year wraps up. We'll do a look back in all things rugby for 2024, some of our best bits, our favourite bits, our worst bits, our worst bits. Wales will probably come out on that. But other than that, thank you for joining us today. I have been Luke, that has been Husey. We'll catch you again next time. See ya.
Peace.